Welcome everyone. Welcome to this amazing lecture today. It is a pleasure to welcome everybody here, faculty, students, friends, colleagues, for Weaving the Narrative, a conversation between Thomas Coldefy and Adrien Gardere. This conversation brings together two remarkable designers whose work continually redefines the relationship between architecture, culture, and storytelling. Through different yet complementary practices, both explore how space can become a medium of memory, imagination, and collective experience. Thomas Coldefy, founding partner and principal of Coldefy, leads an internationally recognized practice based in Lille, Paris, and Shanghai. His work combines conceptual rigor with an openness to context and material experimentation. From the award-winning Hong Kong Design Institute to the visionary Tropicalia biome in northern France, his projects embody an urban ethos of density, diversity, and environmental responsiveness. Coldefy has received numerous accolades, including the International Architecture Award, the European Prize for Architecture, and an AIA Honor Award. In 2022, Thomas Coldefy was appointed Knight of the Order of Arts and Letters by the French Minister of Culture, recognizing his contribution to the artistic influence of France. Thomas Coldefy and his office, Sultan, who is also joining us here today, are completing a residency with Villa Albertine in Miami and Chicago this fall. They've been with us for a few weeks. And this is from kind of one of their statements on Villa Albertine's website. During our residency in Miami and Chicago, we aim to research green space integration in urban environments, exploring how these spaces can address issues such as housing equity, affordability, cultural diversity, and climate resilience. They look forward to engaging with urban planners, community leaders, and environmental advocates to gather insights and foster collaborations. Adrien Gardere, founder of Studio Adrien Gardere, studied French literature before training as a furniture designer. His designs have been produced and distributed by major furniture and lighting brands and entered the permanent collection of public design institutions such as, of course I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, but I'll try, as the Fonds National d'Art Contemporain in France, the Musée des Arts Décoratifs in Paris, and the Design Centre de Belém in Lisbon. Studio Gardere bridges the worlds of design, museography, and scenography. With more than 80 international exhibitions and 13 major museums realized in collaboration with leading architects such as Norman Foster, Sanaa, Peter Scofidio Renfro, David Chipperfield, and many others, this studio has shaped a contemporary language of storage and display, one that fuses artifact, architecture, choreography, and narrative experience. His work has been widely celebrated, and in 2020 he received the Medal of the Academy of Architecture Foundation, 1977, for his contributions to the discipline. Adrien is in Miami as one of the 164 judges representing 37 countries at this year's WAF, or World Architecture Festival, in Miami Beach. Together, Thomas Coldefy and Studio Gardere exemplify a shared pursuit, transforming architecture and design into acts of cultural interpretation. Our hope is that today's discussion invites us to consider how the built environment can communicate ideas, histories, and identities, how space itself can tell a story. Please join me in welcoming Thomas Coldefy and Adrien.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, dear Adrien, for the kind introduction and the resume of what we've been doing. I'm very happy to see this large audience. It's a very welcoming and also a great opportunity for us to be sharing some experience. The title of the talk is called Weaving the Narrative, and we have decided together to do that as a duet of two French engaged in the industry of creation of space, architecture, urban planning. So I think it would be interesting to engage that. So, oh, this is my first slide. So I will start to tell you a little bit about what we do. So I'm Thomas Coldefy. I'm the founding partner of Coldefy Studio, which is a studio of architecture based in Lille, my hometown, north part of France. And then we have a second studio in Paris and another one in Shanghai. We have been working for maybe 18 years, and I think if we would like to summarize a little bit what we strive for is the creation of balanced environmental, urban and social compositions that push the boundaries of cities and life. We say it's a kind of a heavy agenda, but it's actually coming from some intuitions that we had from day one when we engage in this world of architecture, such as you do in the school, is what am I going to do in this world? Where does architecture stand today? Looking at the past, but looking at the future. For us, architecture is a way to express a contemporary situation of a society, and it's a medium for creation of space that are in between what we like to call contradictions. We are building new environments which are often artificially or man-made structure into the natural world, and we are kind of fighting against this idea of everybody likes to have his own space of individual space to belong to find the necessary freedom to exist in life. And at the same time, the society needs community. So we like to think that architecture can be a fantastic job or fantastic media to work in that in between, ever looking or ever searching balance between the built world and the natural world. So what I want to do is to show you a few examples. Adrien will do the same, of how we navigate through this complex profession, but so exciting because we are really at the center of many things, geopolitical decisions, geographical situations, climatic situations, social interactions, and we try every day to enrich the city with new layers. So the first example that I will share with you is the Hong Kong Design Institute, which was designed in our studio in 2006 and completed in 2011. The brief of this project was how Hong Kong is in need of having its own international campus for young designers that should be future entrepreneurs, and they had spread out schools in the city of Hong Kong, and they wanted something that is both attractive and iconic, and at the same time a place of unity for different departments. So they launched, and this is something also interesting to tell to you, is that they launched an international anonymous competition, which means that everybody can compete if you have the degree, if you have your license, but it's open to the younger generation, as well as some of the very mature firms that like also to compete on this very interesting project. So as we were rather young and had nothing to lose and no fear in this first kind of big potential project, we were really interested in looking at the city fabric and looking at what makes Hong Kong kind of a fascinating megalopolis, but also looking at some of the disadvantage or dysfunctionment to create a place that could be influenced by all those parameters. Hong Kong is a very dense city, and at some part also has a beautiful landscape that is around the city. It has also a very interesting city pattern of fabric, which is very vertical, also has some very low-key kind of pedestrian feel of architecture in some market areas. And somehow we felt that all those elements of space in Hong Kong are not really coming together, or they are often in different parts. And we felt like we should define a campus of design that should be influenced by some of the urban devices of Hong Kong to feel like a Hong Kong building, but at the same time enrich it with what we can bring as architects to bring more values. So, of course, some of the ideas were as I was saying, Hong Kong is a layered city. You have a garden, you have the cars. Actually, the level of the street is often for the cars, and you have another level upper for the decks, which are sometimes the ground floor of the condo buildings that are vertical structures. And then you have beautiful gardens that are in some other part of the cities that are more like British kind of design gardens, but not gardens that are really felt or measured by the people. So we started by thinking if you want to make a cut through a very big anonymous competition, we have to be also to go straight to the point to say some things that can be understood by in a very legible or very direct way. And we started to imagine a kind of a metaphor as what could be a campus of design. It should be a place of inspiration, a place of creation, but it should also be a place of education and learning. So we created a building that is actually working with this metaphor of education is the anchor of your future education, not only at school but also your life. And then you need a place to express yourself, which we call the Sky City, kind of a dreamy area. And then we transcript that into a more urban aspect of this idea that Hong Kong is a vertical city, but should not be only a vertical city. We would like to introduce new layers where the city can get in. And from this concept or this kind of very simple idea, but quite universal, we transform this idea into a building that became some kind of a canvas for multiple situations. We started to introduce what we still believe today in 2025, which is something that is a kind of a motto in our research, in our work, is that cities need space for interaction, needs what you here are called social spaces in order to provoke multiple encounters, to provoke culture, to provoke surprise, to provoke the unexpected, but also a building that can relate to the city and be an extension of the city. We believe that architecture should be really influenced by actually urbanism more than the contrary, that urbanism is a place for architecture to interact with the past and the future. So this building for us was the first attempt of making this idea of how to create a new place that feels like a Hong Kong place, that connects the different worlds of the city and the nature into something that is more interweaved or not layered or not stacked, but something that works together in a coexistent way by introducing this garden that is not just a podium, but we kind of introduce a garden which has a unique plaza with a center part which can be a place of encounters. Then we like to play with movement in space, and we believe that stairs, lifts are also place of observation, place of encounters, or place that should be somehow used in a much more narrative way than just a functional way. And if you look at Hong Kong, some of you know Hong Kong, which is a very hilly city, some parts of the pedestrian displacement are made by using those kind of travelators that are climbing the hills, and we played with that and we implemented that into our building to create something that is a kind of a hybrid of Hong Kong in one together. Here there should be some sound, but to end a little bit about this first project in a kind of a summary, what was very rewarding to us is that in last year, Chanel, this French luxury brand, chose the building without knowing that it was designed by French architects. That's not the purpose, but we were super happy to hear that they selected it to do their show, the latest fashion show, and to see how the building can interact with the city, because it is a urban piece now of Hong Kong, which is very vibrant and which is, after several years of occupation, still becomes a place of destination that is more than just a building or just a design school. The next example I want to share with you is another cultural venue that we have been designing and are going to complete in 2026. It's called the Bauan Public Arts Center. It does question also the idea of what should be a cultural institution in the future, something that is not an elitist place only for people who love to go to the museum, but also becoming also a public place of interaction and of multiple encounters. So it's kind of the almost maybe 8 years after we designed this first building, it's kind of the second extension or second part of this research of creating space that are allowing multiple activities. As you can see, when as an architect, when you receive, you don't choose, like in school, sometimes you can choose your site or the land you want to do your dream project. In the real world, so we are given a situation that is often an open space that is left for public buildings to become a new addition, a new equipment, a new infrastructure for a new district. In this case, this is in Shenzhen city in China, district of Bao'an, which is a kind of a recent district with a new airport. And in China, they are fasting a bit the implementation of new cultural institution infrastructures to give civic places to the districts. But the question about what should be this kind of destination was raised to us. What should be an art center? In that case, there is a museum, art galleries, but also some theaters, and so it's kind of a global cultural venue. So often you have a kind of an imagination of a museum that should be a big wow effect, such as the Gardere buildings, for example, that are creating a kind of a landmark and getting some light in the city for tourists, also an attraction. But what we believe is that it should be also a place of public amenity, a space for the people, a space for to enrich your life, a space where you can breathe, not just an institution to learn or an elitist institution, but a place where you want to go with your family. So, for example, in this diagram, we kind of chose not to stack or to put the program on side of each other, but to again use the site to give back some space that we are taking from the city by implementing also a porous building with multiple layers of plaza and gardens that occurs not only on the ground, but that also can occur on an elevated manner to create a kind of a bridge in the district. Those are pictures of the typical Shenzhen situation, new city, 20 years old, very modern, very glassy, big, a lot of cars, and how to create an institution in this kind of environment where we learn at school that the cultural institution is a more weighty, heavier kind of building where that sits in the city as a beautiful landmark, but also feels like you feel the weight of the past, the weight of the culture, which is something really difficult to duplicate in a very new city like Shenzhen. But somehow that was kind of an inspiration for us, because we say, oh, maybe we can do something that is a new way, something in between, not a pastiche, but something new, which is playing with those elements. So we were influenced by the idea of the quarries, marble quarries, saying maybe we can do something that looks like a stone, but push it to another level, to carve the stone, to create a place again of interaction where the city continue its journey through the building, and use another material which is actually glass to express new ways of working with the environment, opacity, semi-opacity, transparency. And we turned this idea of creating a building that is not only will not be a frontier, but we kind of breaking the traditional enclosed museum typology to create an open dialogue with the city, making the building some kind of a living organism, which we imagine like a carved marble block. So again, from getting from the concept to the reality, it's a long journey, but it's something we strive for, to keep this big idea so people can buy it and people can really feel belonging to this idea and enrich the city with those kind of parameters. Is allowing for us to make architecture again much more than just a simple building or a beautiful piece of design, but allowing to propose different ways of of experimenting the city. And again, you can see also now the place that we took from the city with this human plaza on the ground that is becoming a city lounge with some trees. We decided to elevate actually the access of the museum in what we call a sky lounge, a sky lobby. Somehow we can allow people to go at different places in the building, so it looks really alive at different levels and not only as a typical typology where you have the ground floor that is activated and sometimes a rooftop, which is a place where everybody want to go. We like to create something that is much more vibrant. So going from again from concept to reality, or to transform this into a piece of architecture, a material, a physical material, to make glass building looking like marble without doing a pastiche. We kind of like this idea because Hong Kong is very glassy building, glassy atmosphere. So we went to a quarry, a marble quarry, and we actually took some photographs of the marble quarry and we mapped them and we enlarged the scale to make it look like to give it a scale that is much adaptable to the size of the building. And by doing this, we also could push the idea of creating a pattern that has a more sensitive look when you want to have some transparency and opacity, which is actually very difficult to achieve with a piece of stone. And again, to enrich it, to make something that I think is also the beauty of architecture, that can always experiment and create something. You learn from what has been done. You try to create something new by learning from the past and trying to push a new idea. And in this particular case, so we did all this research and we finally did this, find the right scale so we can read the veins that you cannot read at the scale of such a huge building, but also allow what we were looking for to have this transparency and see again people in the building and not people behind a wall. Those are pictures of that are being completed on the facade that are 3 weeks dated, and so the building starts to create this kind of original pattern in the city, a kind of a sculptural building, but in a way with a purpose. It's not a sculpture for the sculpture, it's a purpose of getting the lighting, getting some multiple terraces, and creating kind of a destination that is very alive and very sensitive to its environment. You can see in the transparent parts there will be the theater that will be all shared by the city or used by the city for some plays and some performances. And here is the building as it is today, and in the next months we will have the landscape starting to climb and to inhabitate all the multiple terraces that you can see here on the volumetric. Next project is a project we won about 20 minutes, Adrien. I'm already 20 minutes. Is it okay? The next one I want to share is also very interesting because it's very different again, and that's what I like to share with the School of Architecture, is that in the different patterns or different cultures of the city you can create your path through to invent something that is exciting, or at least we attempt to be it. This is a public administration center cluster. It means it's a government building for the city of Tirana in Albania. It was a big international competition, and maybe what is particular about Tirana, it's a booming city, a booming country, but with a very strong political statement that architecture and culture should be an anchor point of the future of society for Albanian, for everything what they have lived. And as he really believes into it, he likes architecture to push ideas. In our case, it's the site for this government building is in a very dense situation of Tirana and quite chaotic. A lot of cars, noisy. Buildings are very kind of free, and it has a certain beauty, but also at the same time, the city needs a certain clarity and less cars and more place for pedestrian and for social interactions. So it was our first project that we were doing in Tirana, and the Prime Minister said to the architect, please do a building that you wouldn't do somewhere else. You would do a building that relates to the city fabric. I don't want something that you have done somewhere else. I don't want international architecture of of course, all the architects are kind of contemporary architects, but we have to learn from what we see and to again enrich it in somehow. So there is a strong pattern, which is interesting. There is a strong freedom because in the late years, people were allowed to build without any rules. So you find in the street balconies, extensions, creating this kind of a very fun fabric. And at the same time, you have a lot of colors, arts, street art that also the government was pushing for to bring the colors in the city because it was so dark from its history. And then you have also some craftsmanship, of course, as we have in all of our countries, but that are you can really feel when you walk in the city. So we try as architects to use a few things and to kind of push it somehow in a very direct way, because you cannot have too many ideas. You have to choose the battles. And for us, the city is an inspiration. The natural environment, of course, is an inspiration. And the colors that we found are also some things that even so we are not super used to use color in architecture. We said maybe that could be a first time that we try, but we don't want to do it alone. We want to work with a contemporary artist because it was also in the brief to sometimes big public buildings. They ask architects, please have an art installation somewhere. We said most of our competitors put a sculpture or an installation in the plaza, and we said no, we're going to do an architecture with the artist. So starting looking at the patterns of the city, we started to draw some sketches, looking at the old clothes, traditional clothes that they use for national days, which were very interesting. And here you see the situation of the city fabric. So we could have built a small tower, a very iconic or powerful architecture that most actually of our competitors did. And we said, this is our first time in Albania. We have to show how we can enrich it with a kind of a humble building that can have also future lives with the government. We don't want to use it anymore if it's too big. So we started to extrude the block in a very simple manner. And then, because there is some green also around with a stadium on the other side, and the climate in Tirana is very hot, and everybody wants to protect from the sun. We said nature and shades are going to be our friends to create small gardens in a small scale, like pocket gardens, but also with playing with the height of the building, like not making a big building, but more like an assemblage, like a village of smaller buildings. We are going to create a kind of a new fabric, which is much more human and more inviting. And then we asked the artist, what would you do? And he said, well, what I can do is I can work with a new material that he was using. It's acrylic roads, very kind of funny, looking almost like a candy. And he said, we can help you to use that as a kind of a wayfinding or kind of a cultural way to make your building more appropriate, or not more appropriate, but somehow create a cultural aspect, give a cultural aspect to the building in a kind of a contemporary manner. So it's kind of those artistic carpets that are wrapping a little bit the building in many ways, and it's become something that belongs to the building and becomes also kind of a wayfinding to define the pattern of the internal courtyard and to bring this into the reality. Well, this is a picture of the final design that was awarded, where you see again that you see no cars, but you see more like a human fabric with open patios, with an invitation to the people to get in, but always being protected in some kind of a nice, cool kind of atmosphere to have the breeze of the city and the shade of the city and the color also that are giving this kind of sense of identity. So it's kind of the unifying thread of the project. And then again, looking at this, of course, in architecture, according to the facade, you learn how to protect yourself. You can use shade, you can use roads, you can use a horizontal line or vertical lines. And we said, maybe we can do something that is more playful. And looking at the skirts of this old traditional clothes, we are going to make something that will protect the building with an aluminium kind of a curtain kind of protection. Fondation de Chine. I will go much faster now. Fondation de Chine. It's a project we did it's a residential project in Paris, which is kind of a dome. And in Paris, we don't have campus like you guys have in the US. There's only one that was created after World War at the edge of Paris, which has the advantage of being very visible because it's on the highway, ring highway of Paris. But the disadvantage of being in a situation is a bit apart and with a lot of noise and a lot of pollution. And every country has a pavilion, and some countries don't have one. And we wanted to propose, and China didn't have one. So they launched a competition, and we said, how can we create residential buildings that has a feel of Paris, but will also welcome Chinese students. And also the investor is Chinese, so he wants his building in Paris to somehow represent the Chinese identity. So we look at some typology of Osmanian buildings, which have some character, and also a little patio, and an old traditional Tulu system in China, which has a communal space but a protective skin around to protect yourself from the battles. And we invented our own kind of fusion of these two forms, or two typologies, by creating something that is pushing further this idea of the courtyard architecture, but open to the land and to the landscape, because we want more interaction, we want more generosity, we want the landscape to be not a place for aesthetic, but a place really to live, to feel the nature in, and to enrich your daily life. So in the end, we let the nature in, and we decided that this internal courtyard will be a place of visible interaction for students to connect to themselves to each other. We invented this kind of external stair that is becoming a link between the student rooms and giving an access to the public amenities that are in the ground floor, and also going up on a roof garden. And then the building skin, we use brick because it's a kind of a material that is also a bridge between China and France that is used in a domestic way. And as you can see in the inside, we have a warmer material, which is wood, which is kind of giving this feel of being in a cocoon place, or some place where you feel better. And I will finish by not showing this project, but just because Henry asked me to talk about Tropicalia, and it's really another kind of typology. It's been 10 years we work on this project. This is a tropical greenhouse, and it's in north part of France, so it's kind of an awkward situation to do a tropical space in north part of France. But there is an interest for people that want to keep learning about the nature, the evolution, and some of the species that are in danger, to diffuse also culture. And our clients gave us a site that is in a beautiful region, but in a site that has been classified to being humanized. And again, this fascination for nature is an ever constant, and will continue to be something important for people to learn about our spaces, and a strong destination also in the culture of the city. So what we wanted to do, because this project aims to be an immersion in the fauna and flora, like a destination for research, but also a destination for tourism, and a destination with connections with some countries of Africa or South America to exchange some ideas and make sure that people are aware, and if they cannot travel and take a plane to go there, maybe learn about the spaces. So we designed a project that is an extension of a small hill, a piece of nature with a global dome, and it's surrounded by this small ring where we kind of decided to put all the facilities, all the rooms that needs to be used to do some research, or to some theaters like here to learn, and to use this little hill to also create an extension of the land for people to interact with the outdoor space. And inside we have this wild system that has a certain beauty, but at the same time it can be fragile and needs very high temperature, because north part of France is not Amazonia. And then there was a debate about architecture should really are we going to consume a lot of energy to do that because we don't want to do that anymore? So how can we make an architecture that can produce energy? So we decided to work on a scheme, on a sample, on research about creating a dome that is kind of a giant heater by encapsulating all the steel structure into a double layer of TFE. You have the first one. It's not glass. It's cushions of air. Then we have like a 3-meter gap, and below that you have another layer of ETFE, and it's like almost like an air chamber of a bike, where all the air is heated by the sun throughout the year. Here you can see the scale of it, it allows to have like 90 or 80 degrees in this kind of air chamber, and by using this air and transferring it into a water tank at the bottom of the building, you can see this section here, then the heat is allowing to generate the entire heat at 26 degrees all year by not without using any fossil energy, and even we distribute this energy to adjacent or neighbors like the hospital that is nearby. So that's the way the project got approved. Becomes besides being a destination, it becomes something else that is also a place of production, a place that is creating also new values of enriching the environment and bringing new energy into some potential neighborhood buildings. And now I will leave the place to my friend Adrien, the very talented Mr. Adrien Gardere.
Merci. Wow, thank you. So you, hop, 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 hop. Voilà, c'est bon. So you.
Hello. Does it work? Yeah, it works. It works very fine. Merci, Thomas. That's very, very loud. Yeah, thank you. That's better. Tickling. Well, I'm very humbled to speak after Thomas and show you all those projects. Maybe what we're going to try is to say that somehow I try to weave and connect what Thomas has been showing you at the scale of architecture and bring into the scale of maybe the narrative in space, and how do you actually deal with the architecture, deal with the content, deal with... I hear myself twice, is that normal? Hello?
It's fine.
It's fine? Okay. So, yeah, to try to see how... We are not architect. My studio is not a studio of architecture. We have architect in-house, but we are not architects, and we work with architects. We work with people like Thomas, with Zoltan, and we actually work at their side to see how, from the narrative and the materiality that Thomas has presented to you, we can actually continue at the very scale of the human being in the space. So far we've opened 13 museums around the world. We've also opened about 80 exhibitions worldwide. But I'd like to go deep into maybe 2 or 3 examples that show you how you can actually almost choreograph the people, the material, the collections, the space, the architecture, and how you can create content and create narrative through space. So let's go out of where we are, which is here, up, and let's go elsewhere. So we're leaving Florida and we're going to south of France, Narbonne. So Narbonne is actually was the capital of the Roman Empire when they arrived in French Gaelic in the antiquity. And this created here probably one of the largest capitals ever outside of Italy, which was a very, very large capital, incredibly big, with capitals, with Colosseum, with arenas and everything. Except it was very pagan, because it was the oldest one. So with the Christianization of the Roman Empire, they started destroying everything, and eventually the city was completely destroyed. And they used the stone very much as the quarrier that Thomas was showing you. They used the stone and they built the city walls. And in the 19th century, we happily dynamited all these city walls because of the cars and the trains and the roads. And some crazy archaeologists saved about 1,200 stone of a ton each and stacked them in a desacralized church. And there was an international competition that we did with Norman Foster and Partner in the British architectural practice, which I'm sure you know. They built a few things here too. And the competition was about creating a museum that would host this collection, and in addition also host some frescoes and villa discoveries, archaeological site, and the nautical port that had been excavated. And the problem is, how do you showcase fragments? How do you actually convey the monumentality to which those stones have belonged to in a museum where you just have fragments, stones? And that was probably the most, I would say, the spark of the project, because when I went to visit the church and I saw all the stones being dismantled and organized, I was thinking that maybe the brief, the program that we had received was not the good one, because they asked for 1,200 meters square, that's about 120,000 square feet of storage, where most of those stones would be stored and hidden from the public, while they would showcase few of them in the permanent galleries. And that seemed to me very, very awkward, to take those stones that had been in a church for 120 years and hide them from the public with a new museum. So again, thinking about what are those fragments, I started thinking about fragments itself. You know, I started thinking, well, a fragment is a part of something more. It's just a pixel, you know, like a pixel in an image. So instead of creating an horizontal, huge storage of 1,200 meters square, why don't we create a storage which is vertical and which is going to almost be able to convocate the idea or the remembrance of the city walls and of the palaces to which they belonged. And so we started thinking that actually we could do a glyptothèque. So glyptothèque is like a... It's very strange. Wow. Better? Yeah, better. A glyptothèque is like a library of stone. And we thought that actually we could do a mechanical, dynamic, useful, alive dynamic storage that actually would be permanently alive and changing and moving, which is, of course, is quite paradoxical for a museum where normally you do not move the artworks. But it became also a kind of a visual identity for the museum and an opportunity to, well, recreate entirely the palace system, but also embed multimedia, because instead of having, you know, a film that is attached to a stone and after 6 months everyone is bored of that film because everyone's seen it, we started thinking that if you have a bookshelf, we could do almost like a publishing house and do different contents for different stones. And so when the museum opened, we had 20 stones illustrated, but afterwards they have 1,180 stones to illustrate. So it's like they have years of programming of this content. So the idea totally enthusiasted the architect who made it the backbone and really the spine of the project. And it became the frontier between the public spaces and the professional spaces. And on one hand, you would have the entrance, you would have the bar, the cafe, you would have the permanent galleries, you would have the auditoriums and temporary galleries. And on the other hand, you would have atriums, labs, research, and the rest of the storage, which was much, 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 much smaller. So we had gained space by creating this quite crazy 75-meter long wall, 12-meter high, double-faced, which hosted about 800 stone, and which became almost a piazza. You know, it was almost a public space, just very much like the one that Thomas was showing us in Hong Kong, where suddenly the artifact becomes a place of gathering and a place of understanding, and understanding almost intuitively. You don't need to explain anything to understand that. Then we work with the architects also in picking up the nature of the wall, which are ramped earth sire wall, like insulated ramped earth concrete in a way. And also with prefab beams on the top, and that's the beast under construction. It's actually two buildings that are meeting at the point of the bookshelf, because the foundations of the bookshelves is extremely important, because again it's about 800 tons of bookshelf, so it's really heavy. It took us about 10 years to do this project from A to Z, and this is when we opened the museum. So there's a lot of references also to Roman architecture with impluviums, atriums, and peristyls. And this is my baby. The big baby. And this is no CGI, this is real photos. And what I like about it is that you don't need labels, you don't need text, you don't need know nothing to understand suddenly what those stones could have been belonging to, be it the city walls, be it the monuments to which the city walls were made of. And so the machine brings a stone, starts a little movie, and so forth. And so every 15 minutes, the machine displaces and reorganizes the whole wall. And then you have the zenithal light, and that's the machine. It's called a transstocker, which is like a forklift on a ladder, in a way. And then, of course, there is also the permanent galleries with their multimedia immersive spaces. One element which was very interesting is that we have the same skin outside and inside. So in the sense, there's no materiality. It's not a white box. It's not a volume exogenous to the rest of the architecture. It's the same. It's just a very simple building. Sire wall, prefab concrete, and all the metal work. And I'm really convinced that a museum or an architecture or a display is really about how do you convey the narrative? How do you make it understandable to each and every one, whatever their background, whatever their knowledge, whatever their path, whatever their culture, and how do you make them weave their own story with their feet, with their body, you know, as they move. And this is funny because this is my Richard Long somehow moment. I don't know if you know Richard Long, or you should. It's an American artist, very important, landscape artist, land art artist. And he made those kind of accumulation of stones. Actually, this one was a natural one that we found on site of an archaeological site. So I'll give you a bit of image of moving so you get to understand a bit of how it works. Yeah, I want you to see the machine working.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the beast. And the light is natural. There's nothing fake in the light that you're going to see right now. And that's François Pierre, who was one of the architects at Foster & Partner. And, you know, the question of the fragment raises something which is very important. It is the one of incompletion, you know? How do you make something incomplete? And I think it is essential that you show things that are incomplete, in the sense that there is space, there is room for your own imagination, for the visitors to project himself in it. You know, if you take this is really bad. If you take the example of a jigsaw, you know jigsaws? When they're ugly, they're always ugly. Jigsaws are always ugly. When they're finished, it's ugly. But when they're unfinished, you can't help yourself wanting to fill up the gaps. But that's the same thing with any story. If I tell you and I show you everything finished, you're just going to be the witness of it. But if I leave some gaps and if I leave spaces for your own imagination, then you want to fill it up. You want to complete it, and you're going to complete it with a bit of yourself, with your own culture, your own background, and it will be different from your friend, your neighbors, or your family that was going to complete it differently. And I think that's a very, very important element, that question of not offering something finished, but always leaving space for appropriation, which is exactly what Thomas was saying about those public spaces. So let's go somewhere else. Boom. So we leave the south of France and we're going to the north of France. So this is Lens, not very far from Lille, which is where Thomas has his headquarters. And this is a building of Sana. Sana is the Japanese architect, Sejima and Nishizawa and Associates. Nothing about Yemen. There's no Oriental tropism in Sana. It's just the acronym of their names. But it happens to be the capital of Yemen too. But who cares? Anyway, project, are you familiar with Pennsylvania down in Florida? Do you know the north, far north? Okay. Well, in the far north, like you have Pittsburgh, Rust Belt. You go a bit down south and you go to Uniontown. See Uniontown? That's where they shot, I think, Deer Hunter. But this is Deer Hunter, but without Meryl Streep and without De Niro. So this is like hardcore North Rust Belt. And those people are not used to have museums. And how do you make it accessible? And how do you make people allowed and invited and feel free to maybe even run in the museum? You know, this is a very famous movie by Godard, which is called Bande à part, which was redone by Bertolucci, and which was reinvented also by Agnès Varda, was in Bande à part, they're trying to do the Louvre in 3 minutes, which of course is tough, so they run. And this is a metaphor for me just for saying, you want people to be able to walk their way, you know? And a museum, if it starts to be this kind of super, I would say, forced, constrained path, well then it's not pleasing. So you want to be and allow people to almost deambulate, meander as they wish, and yet make in sort that all of these meanderings are significant, that they convey and they carry a story and a narrative. So back to this place, which is, as you can see, those pit towards there, this is a real rust coal mine area. And all the project was about accessibility. How do you give people the feeling, and not only the feeling, that they're welcome, they can step in, it's theirs, and they belong to it, and they're entitled to step into it. So the park had 10 different entrances. The foyer, which is this is the anti-Frank Gehry architecture. It's like totally anti-Frank Gehry. It's like humble, delicate, subtle. It's like totally different. And how do you create that almost landscape welcoming journey? So people can arrive from all parts of the park. They arrive on the foyer. Where is this?
I should have used it.
You have the foyer here. They can enter from all 4 sides. They arrive from all the different south, north, east, west of the park. And then you have temporary exhibitions, an auditorium, and the permanent galleries. And temporary galleries. And the permanent galleries, when I started working on the project, Sana had designed this gallery, which is extraordinary in length. We're talking 125 meter long, 25 meter wide, 3,000 meters square. That's about 32,000 square feet. That's a football field in length and half in width. It's pretty massive, very massive. And the first issue I saw was, how do you make people feel comfortable and at ease entering such a huge space, you know? And it's not easy, especially because you can see that the height and the floor level of the foyer was much higher than the gallery itself, and then we had a 0.3% slope because we needed ceiling height. So we dug into the topography in order to get that ceiling height. And Sejima had designed this kind of dropping of a volcano lave, you know, like lava. And I thought it was going to generate confusion. People would be lost, you know, they're coming like this, they're scattered away, not understanding what space they entered. So I suggested to instead create a terrace that would be at the same level of the foyer, so that people, when they arrive, they actually dominate the gallery, which is absolutely, radically, totally in the reverse of any museum institution. If you go to the Met, you got to go up to the flight of stairs. You enter the big door, and you have a vestibule, and then you have another flight of stairs, so you can really feel the way of the culture looking down onto you, because it is not for you. Well, then here, it was all the contrary. How do you make people feel, you know their way, so that they dominate, and you can see, and you say, oh, I'm going to go down the Nile, I'm going to go down the Euphrates, I'm going to go down the Mediterranean Sea, because all the gallery was going to host all this kind of ambassadors of the Louvre collection, ranging from more or less minus 3,000 up to mid-19th century. So we worked on the collections, we schemed the art, we worked on almost aggregates of territories and civilization and how we could work with the different elements together. And another thing that I was convinced is I didn't want to have anything on the walls. Because if I had anything on the walls, well, I would have needed to partition the walls, because you can't have paintings for 125 meters long, you know? It's awful. So I didn't want to partition the space, so I decided to have everything in space, so that everything would be in dialogue, in perspective, so that you could see things in space and not along the wall, which is another very big museum fatigue. You go wall, art, label, wall, art, label, wall, art, label, window, you jump. So, no. So really here, on the contrary, it was all about really creating this kind of flow of the public. And then Sejima said to me, well, if you're not putting anything on the walls, we're going to make sure no one puts ever something on the walls. And we cladded the walls with the same frosted aluminium that were on the outdoor, which, by the way, Oma just did in Torino for the Egyptian museum that he renovated. So the only thing we had was this timeline, which gives you a sense of where you are. And this is a space. So you can see it's pretty massive. And this is a time lapse, but it's a bit long, so I'll get through it. But that's the installation of both the artworks, but also the cladding of the aluminium walls. And oddly enough, it's all about putting all the artifacts and all the selections of the artifacts. We started with 800, we ended up with 250. It was about making sure that they would make sense and that people could weave the understanding by themselves. In a very, in a way you empower people. You're not telling them, here is all what you don't know and you should have known if you had had your diploma and if you knew all the books we've read, and then good luck to understand what you're going to see. No, we wanted, on the contrary, to say, come, step in, get down, move around, circulate, weave, throw bridges, build connections. Even if they're wrong, it doesn't matter. And generate the meaning by yourself. And then once you've hooked people like that, well then you have them. Like, for example, here, I mean, the Kouros, the Discophore, and the Jupiter, they're different scale, but there's one point with the perspective, and it's almost an anamorphosis. So you have the feeling they're all the same size. The museum became the most visited museum outside of Paris the very year it opened, and remained so for 12 years, with an average visitors of about 500 to 600,000 a year. I just show you a bit of moving image because it says a lot when you can see both the architecture but also the movement of the public inside the museum itself. The architecture is stunning, and the Sana, they are incredible. And the funny thing is that most of the curators and conservators of the Louvre thought that the artworks were closer to the public and that they were more endangered. But in reality, there's far more spacing and far more distance and far more protection. It's just that they breathe. It's just about space. You know, it's just about how much space and freedom you actually give to people. And how somehow it's about trust, you know? It's being confident in people's capacities. If you don't trust people for understanding, they're not going to try to understand. They're going to turn their back to you and just say, it's not for me. You just said so. Anyway, so then we also designed the storage and the multimedia and the back of house, which is visible. That was a bit before Narbonne, and then Narbonne became, of course, the epitome. But it has become an incredible site. And just an anecdote is that about 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Anne-Theresa Kerschmecker, who is a very interesting contemporary choreograph dancer company from Belgium, came and was invited to dance in the gallery. And they danced in the gallery, and just like in the Godard movie, they ran in it. So I was super happy. I was very, very, very happy. So maybe then at another scale, very different, I'm going to bring you to another part, which is in Japan. And in Japan, I worked with Reiko Sudo. She's a textile designer, which is probably one of the most cutting-edge textile designers in Japan, working with 60 different mills throughout Japan. And her textiles are gorgeous. I mean, this is one of hers. They're gorgeous. They're incredible. But the problem is that exhibiting textile is the most boring thing on earth. I mean, it's like, it's dead. You know, you can't touch it. It's not moving. It should be worn. It should be moving. And it's just there, like little samples, and it's very, very boring. So I wanted to try to find a solution to make the textile move without having to create something that moves. And there's a very strong tradition in Japan, which is called the koinobori. And these are flying socks, you know, with the wind. And they're very auspicious. They are used in March for announcing the birth of young boys. They're super important. And I looked at those, and they're very, very, very profoundly Japanese. And I thought of them, and I thought of murmurations, you know, school of fish, murmurations of birds. When you see those, you see movement. Can't help it. You know, it's just like the incomplete process. There's a capacity here to convocate movement, even if it's still. So what we did is we designed kind of a super designy koinobori. And we started imagining a huge school of fish that would display and showcase all the textiles of Reiko. So we did some trials and we did some tentative with Reiko. That's Reiko. And That's Saito-san, with whom we worked. Trying to think, how can we create a movement even though it is static? So eventually we installed many of those. Took us about 10 days to install them all. It was quite crazy because there was a lot of strings, lots of strings. And this is probably the most visited sock exhibition ever. I mean, we had 100,000 visitors coming just to look at flying socks. But it did work. You know, people would come and spend the whole day there. We had music created by Minami-san from Kyoto, and people would just sit there in this twirling, like instantaneous, frozen movement of fish and of her textiles. And then since then, we've been working with Reiko on many of her installations throughout the world. And then last, because I think it's interesting to change format. You know, you have projects like last 10 years, like the one of Narbonne, 5 or 6, like Lens, this. And there's another one we did we did it in China, actually. We did it in China. So we leave Japan and go to Shanghai in the power station of art, which is this huge, enormous electrical power plant that has been transformed into a contemporary art museum. And here, the tough thing is that we were exhibiting photos and a movie of quite very famous photographer in France called Raymond Depardon. And this is the photos of his farming hometown and all the farms of his very, very, like, again, farmer lost countryside of France. And how do you exhibit this in Japan? I mean, in China, sorry. And the difficulty also is that we had photos, but we had a movie, a 1-hour movie for which we needed to create an auditorium somehow, just like here. So we needed to create a place. And that's the beginning of the movie. And in the beginning of the movie,
Au bout des routes, il y a les fermes.
that's Raymond Depardon speaking, and he says, at the beginning, there are roads, and at the end of the roads, there are farms. So we took this very literally, and we thought, okay, so it's all about those hills, it's all about those roads that leads to the farm. So based on that, what we thought is that this time we're not going to make anything move, we're not going to make people dance, we're not going to make, but we were going to create almost a topography. How can you bring the hill? How can you bring the geography and the hills into that exhibition? And we thought that maybe we could create a kind of a slope, a hill that would raise people, bring them to a height when then we would have all the stairs and all the sitting area that would allow you to contemplate the whole of the movie. So we tried with those, this is LED panels, super high definition, just like you can find only in China. Does it work? It doesn't work this way. Yes, this is working. So we had these huge panels with extract of the roads and extract of the movie. And there was a kind of a blending of the moving image and the still image, the photography and the extract of the movies. In a way, we were almost inviting people to meander some extract of the movie, some of those roads that they would then see as they climb up that hill. But that hill, in order to not have any handrails and everything, was surrounded by those stairs, and those stairs were becoming the gradins on which the public could sit and watch the whole movie. Thank you. Q&A.
Yes. Thank you so much. We have time for questions, and that's part of the idea today. There's one in the back.
Go.
Yeah, so I just want to know how you guys got to the decision you guys currently sit on.
Sorry.
I personally want to start my own firm in the future. I want to be as successful as you guys have done. I want to know how you guys got
I think we need to give you a mic. Because I'm deaf. I'm old. You're young. Oh, by the way, so that is mine. That is him. That is me. That is his. Wrong card. That's okay. No, it's duet. It's yes.
Okay. So I would like to start my own firm in the future, be as successful as you guys are. I want to know how it is that you guys managed to get to the position that you guys currently sit on.
That what? I didn't. What decision? What? The computer. I didn't know. He's American. He didn't get it. What?
He wants to know what's the formula of success. How did you guys get to the position where you are right now?
Whoa.
The secrets.
Okay.
I have no idea. No, the only thing I can tell you is that the more you do things you like, well, eventually people will come with projects that you like. If you start doing projects that you don't like, you'll end up doing projects you don't like. So it's very costly and it's very dire to hold to do and to be adamant on doing things that you do want to do and that you do appreciate. You're gonna eat pasta for years. But eventually, people will acknowledge what you've done as being what you like to do and what you are doing. So they will come to you for that kind of work, and they will expect from you these kinds of services. But if you start doing things that are where you're just motivated by making money for it, right? Well, you will make money, but is that a goal? No. Is it allowed to say that? Sorry. No. Well, I don't know if that's success, but at least walk your path. Walk your way. I would say.
Tomas, you work in a corporate firm here in the U.S. too. So.
I worked in a what? Sorry.
In a corporate firm. You work at KPF and you.
Yeah, before. So, yeah, like Adrien was saying, I think no magic, no secrets. I think everyone has his own also eager, and don't have to shoot for the moon. But if you, in my case, I can only share my stories. In my studies, I didn't know I wanted to be an architect, but during the studies, I started to find it quite interesting. And then studies and school is good to learn, to have a kind of an initiation. But then what I wanted to see was how people walk and to go walk in as many places as I could. So I did a lot of internship in different countries. Also, I went to Netherlands, I went to London, I went to New York. For me, there's no better learnings than trying things, looking at things, and not reject, and not think this is good, this is bad. Also, when you're super young, because eventually, at some point, it will come like naturally into your body, what you like and what you dislike and what you want to do with everything you've seen. And this is my interpretation of finding the way of what you want to do in this field, and also learn from different practices. Like I said, my father was an architect also, so I saw one architect, but it's not enough. Then I worked in London. Then I worked In New York, I went to work for KPF, which is a big American practice, more corporate, but still doing a very professional job. And also work with Tadao Endo, which was doing some museum in Paris for Fondation Pinault, and I was working for his executive architect. And for me, all those are learning experience that eventually came to define what I liked and what I wanted to do. And then key to success is if you're scared to try, then you cannot have success. If you're not scared and you take some risk, you have more chance to be successful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think it's not about luck. It's about sizing the opportunities. So what you need is to be able to acknowledge them, see them, recognize them, and I think that I mean we're surrounded by opportunities. The question is, do we pick them up? Sometimes it's good too. Sometimes you don't. It's not the end of the world. But and another thing is maybe to correct what I said. Everything you've seen is not about liking. I really don't care about design. I really don't care about aesthetic. I mean, it's not about I like it or you like it. It's not a matter of taste. It's a matter of is it relevant? Is it on target? Does it serve its object? Does it serve what I'm expected to deliver? Is it relevant? Is it pertinent? Is it right? That's what matters. Not liking, not liking. That's a matter of taste. If it's a matter of, oh, I like it, I don't like it, then it's not very interesting. It doesn't matter. What matters is that, to my point of view, does it work? The lapidary wall you've seen in Narbonne, it's not a matter you like it or not. Because it's the aesthetic, it's driven by the very logics, which are the ones of the stones, which are the ones of the fragments, which are the ones of the storage, which are the ones of etc., etc. So it's a kind of a converging set of constraints that lead to a solution that seems so obvious and so evident and fluid that you embrace it and that's it. You don't see it. You live it. Anyway. And that I think is important.
Another hour on this question. But just wanted to add that, like you were saying, for me, what's very important is the architect it's an art. Architecture is an art, but as a difference with the painter or the sculptor, somehow it's at the service of people, of clients, of youth, and in order to be successful for the project, but also for yourself, is you have to convey those people to like what you propose. And as you were saying, if you start to be convinced by what you do and you share this passion, then the client will have like the eyes open and say, this is great, fantastic, because you tried your best to answer his question. So the question of conviction to convey your ideas to another person or to a larger group is a key to success.
Thank you for your presentation. I had a question that I was hoping that you could answer, which is talking about the power of narrative and storytelling.
Yes.
I think that the thesis of every project is extremely clear, and that's something that the students are learning to integrate into their projects. And I was hoping maybe you could speak on that.
Yes. Hello. After the key of success, the key of narrative. Okay, so I'm going to try to give you a key. It's about, this is, Flaubert, education of sentimental education. Wait, read it, it's nice. It's a nice book. But Flaubert said also that anything you look long enough becomes of interest. So my response would be, look, listen, observe. Don't try to put, some kind, as Thomas said, if you have things to say of your own, and if you have an artistic like urge of saying or doing something, be an artist. It's great, being an artist. But when I wake up in the morning, I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say to anyone. But give me a bone, and I'll be the worst Rottweiler's pit bull, whatever dog, until I get the marrow of that bone out. So you got to observe, you got to listen, and as Thomas said, we are at the service. You're serving something. It can be a story, it can be a housing, it can be a stadium, it can be a cinema, it could be an auditorium, it could be a school, whatever. But you're at the service. So how do you fulfill that service? And I think it starts by listening, it starts by observing. And just to give you an anecdote, you see that little pocket knife. So this is an Opinel, like the absolute icon of French pocket knife. I spent hours playing with that, trying to understand what was interesting in it. Was it the mechanism? Was it the uses and matters? Was it the manufacturing process? And eventually, I cut the handle shorter than the blade. So I had either a small blade or a big blade. And then I planted it, and I was playing with my little handle on evenings, rather drunk evenings. And then I ended up thinking that actually that movement could be the one of a lamp. And that maybe I could go from direct lamp, directional lamp, to indirect lamp. And I designed this, which became the lamp. It's the same, except it's the first lamp ever that has the bulbs attached to the lampshade and not to the stand. All the other lamps, the bulbs were attached to the lampshade. And now they're attached to the stand. And here they're attached to the lampshade. So they move along. And the lampshade has a slot that allows to move from one position to the other. This is at Artemide, and we sold about 3 million of them since over the last 20 years. And it's nothing. It's just an archetypal lamp. But the movement of it, the way you prehand it, the way you grasp it, is kind of intuitive, new, and yet obvious. And in all the projects I showed you, what I try to find is this kind of thread. And it can be spectacular, but it's nonetheless always rooted. And I think that that comes from the observation of things like if you were fresh, like if you were a kid, always joyfully discovering things as if it was your first toy, and wondering what you're going to do with it. And that freshness is, it communicates. People embrace it easily. And I think that's the kind of things you want to crack in a subject. It's almost like a formula. You want to crack it, and find the solution in it, rather than saying, "Oh, I love pink and blue, and I'm going to do some draperies in there, and maybe some touch of embroidery." Doesn't mean that I don't have anything. I have nothing against blue, pink, and embroidery. I can work with those, but as objectives, not as superficial veneer.
Hello, again. So on this question, maybe my answer would be that yes, you're right to address this question because it is super important. In this room, I don't know how many are going to graduate in architecture and want to be a practitioner, an architect. But if you want to avoid frustration of saying, "Oh, I have a super good idea, but my friend, he sold it better than me and he got the job," this is very frustrating.